Hey everyone, Dylan here from All You Can Board with another Marvel Champions video, and today we are continuing my top 5 aspect allies. I did this one already on aggression. Today we are tackling justice, so I'm going to give you my top 5 justice allies. Now, we had some great discussion in the comments for the aggression. You guys let me know which ones you would have ranked in your top 5, which ones you think I maybe should have included, or how you would have ordered them compared to how I ordered mine. It was tons of fun talking with you guys. I'm hoping we can have some of that discussion again in the comments of this one. Justice is going to be a little bit interesting because a lot of the justice allies are kind of situational. They're not just blanket, hey, this is, the best one, or these are the best 5. So many of them, it depends which villain you're playing against. It depends what kind of deck you're building. You might have a completely different list than me, just based simply on which villains you're playing the most, which villains you own, which decks you're playing with, which heroes you own. It's going to be a lot of variation in this one. So this is my personal top 5. I'm going to explain to you exactly why I made the picks that way, and then we can discuss it more in the comments. Again, there's only, I think, 7 allies for Justice in the game so far, so there's really only 2 being kept off this list. And I'm going to break the 2 of those down for you before we even jump into number 5. So the 2 that aren't making my list are Quake and Spider-Man. So let's tackle these one by one really quick. So Spider-Man is a 5-cost ally that has 4 health. He thwarts for 2, he attacks for 2, and his responsibility is after you play Spider-Man from your hand, you can remove 3 threat per player from a side scheme. So Spider-Man is not a bad ally by any means. The reason he's not on this list is that I find him to be a little bit expensive for what he does. His ability can be very strong. Even at solo play, you're still removing a 3 threat from a side scheme and getting a pretty strong ally on the board, and obviously that increases based on player count. However, I just find that at his cost, no matter when I put Spider-Man into a deck, no matter what my intentions are, I just find it hard to be in a situation where I can easily play Spider-Man. I have played him, he has been great, but just based on some of the other allies on this list and how much usability they get, I had to just barely have Spider-Man miss this list. But again, that's not saying he's a bad ally. I just think that me personally, I don't utilize him nearly as much as the other 5 on this list. Quake, on the other hand, has the potential to be a great ally who would easily crack this list if I was playing more decks that utilized her. So she is a 2-cost ally with 2 health that has 1 thwart and 2 attack. Just those base stats alone, you could almost slot her in just in terms of usability, because in Justice, having a 2-cost ally that you can use as a chump blocker and get 2 damage out with a single attack is almost pretty much worth it. You can almost make the case that the Quake belongs in a lot of Justice decks, but I'm trying to base this more on the power level of the card and which ones I think are the strongest, not just baseline, hey, this is just a 2-cost ally and that's kind of good enough. That's not enough to sort of crack my top 5. That being said, if you are hitting her ability often enough, and her ability is response after a minion schemes, you can exhaust Quake to deal 2 damage to that minion. If you're able to get that off enough and keep Quake and play without having to block to have her, be killed off, I think that that's completely worth it. If you want to be constantly flipping to alter ego form and having enemies or minions scheme against you and ping them for 2 damage every single turn, potentially that could be a great ability and you could get a lot of use out of Quake. So again, not saying that she's bad by any means, and not saying that a 2-cost ally isn't really solid enough as it is. I just find that I can find some basic allies that I could almost take this spot instead of Quake and function the exact same if all we're talking about is needing a 2-cost ally. Obviously the 2 attack is still good at that cost, but anyways, so Quake just barely misses the list because of that. But again, keep in mind, depending on your play style, you might have a different result with Quake. Okay, so let's jump into number 5, Justice allies, and why I put them at that spot. Okay, so coming in at number 5, just sneaking onto the list, is one of the newest Justice allies, and that is Speed. This is Thomas Shepard. So this is a 4-cost, 4 health ally that has 1 attack and 2 thwart. Each of those do 1 consequential damage, and the ability is after Speed thwarts specifically, you can ready Speed, and that's a limit of once per round. So Speed is a solid ally at 4 cost with 4 health, and with having the ability to do 2 thwart, you have upwards of 8 thwart off of this 4-cost card, with the ability to act as a blocker and potentially get some attack in there. Really, the readying of Speed on the thwart, it's not I never found it to be this huge power, something that really overpowers this ally or anything like that. It's just a lot of utility, being able to potentially do 4 thwart in a single turn, or if you really need to change it up, to do 2 thwart and then also do an attack. depending on the situation, that could be really useful if you need that extra damage, swinging in. If you're able to boost his stats in some way, you can get more to that as well. I think that there was enough potential here that in the times that I played with speed with it, which, granted a lot of it was in the Scarlet Witch deck, I got enough use out of speed that I was convinced enough to slot him above Spider-Man and Quake. And that's really what it came down to. Speed, Quake, and Spider-Man were all sort of in contention for this number 5 spot. The other 4 I knew were going to end up in those 4 spots, at least in some way. The number 5 spot was up for grabs. I gave it to speed just based on, the potential to have 8 thwart across, the 4 different swings, and to be able to do it across 2 turns because he readies once per round. So I got enough use out of speed that's where he slots in. Again, he is newer, so depending on how I use speed going forward and how I see him compared to Quake and Spider-Man as we go forward, there's a chance that these ones could change a little bit because we just haven't had as much playtesting time with speed as we have had with Spider-Man or Quake. So speed slots in at number 5. That's why I think it's still a very solid ally. And let's jump on to number 4. Okay, coming in at number 4 is Jessica Jones. Now, this is one that has been in the game for a while, since the core set. Jessica Jones is the one that is situational. You're going to get a different amount of value out of her depending on the villain, depending on the situation, depending on how the cards flip. But there is a high potential to Jessica Jones, and that's why I'm slotting her in at number 4, because I played her recently. So basically, I was playing the Galaxy's Most Wanted campaign. And in one of the scenarios, I specifically tried switching Rocket to Justice because he has a lot of potential in there as a Justice ally. I thought I'd try him out. And Jessica Jones was one of the cards I threw in there. And I noticed that in 2 of the games that I played, despite me still not winning those games, that Jessica Jones was just an absolute MVP. And that's because she's a 3 cost with 3 health. And she has 2 attack and 1 thwart, which means that the attack is her stronger side baseline, because you can do, basically, if you look at it as, doing 3 swings with Jessica Jones, you gain 6 damage for 3, which works out to, for every resource you pay, is 2 damage. For thwart, for attack, generally that tends to be the average baseline. If you spend 1 resource, getting 2 attack or 2 thwart is solid, average, and you're content with that. Anything higher is a lot better, anything lower is on the weaker side. Her ability is that Jessica Jones gets +1 thwart for each side scheme in play. So your mileage is going to vary here. If even with 1 side scheme in play, a 3-cost ally with 3 health that has 2 thwart and 2 attack, each with only a consequential damage, that's a solid ally because you're going to get really good results. You're going to be happy with her entire performance. After, whether she finishes with a block, whether you use her 3 times, you're going to be completely content with that performance. But the potential to have 3 thwart or 4 thwart, depending on the situation, is where things get crazy. And that's where I noticed that she became an MVP for me, because there were a few scenarios in Galaxy's Most Wanted where I actually did have 2 or 3 side schemes in play just because of my bad luck. And regardless of, Jessica Jones isn't necessarily changing, swinging the entire game in my favor with her power level, but at the same time, me getting 3 thwarts for 3 each and doing 9 thwart total off of Jessica Jones for a 3-cost ally is ridiculous. And so again, you're not going to always have that result with Jessica Jones, and it's hard to grade her just based on that. But I think that she's solid enough, even with a single side scheme in play, that as long as you're playing against a villain that has reliably side schemes coming out, whether that's as on the extreme of like Red Skull or whether that's just on a generic villain that has a couple come out throughout the game, I think you'll be pretty content with Jessica Jones. And I think that I've had enough success with her that I'm confident putting her at this spot. And granted, there might be some people that even rank her higher than this, depending on how often you're putting her in a deck and in a situation where you're able to hit those higher levels of her power levels. So Jessica Jones was a good spot. I thought it was a good spot for her at number 4, but again, she could have actually been higher depending on how often you're really hitting her at, 2 thwart, 3 thwart, 4 thwart, and the higher numbers. Jessica Jones, number 4. Let's go to number 3. Okay, coming in at number 3, this is an interesting one, Agent Coulson. So this is a 3-cost ally with 3 health, 2 thwart, and 1 attack. The ability is response. After Agent Coulson enters play, search your deck and discard pile for a preparation card, add it to your hand, shuffle your deck. So this is an interesting pick for me because out of all the allies on this list, I probably use Agent Coulson, maybe not the least, but one of the least, because I don't often play Black Widow, which is where he would be an easy slot in, or play a lot of decks where I'm like constantly thinking about, I have enough preparation cards to include Agent Coulson. But I honestly probably should have been looking at these situations a little bit different. Even if you only have a couple preparation cards in the deck, A 3-cost ally that has 2 thwart and 3 health, that has the potential for 6 thwart across the 3 turns, the 3 attacks, or the 3 actions, and it can be a blocker, is good enough as it is. If there's even a chance that you can hit the ability and tutor out a card, it's insane value. And I should clarify, so when I say tutor out a card, not everyone is going to be familiar with that term. It comes from Magic the Gathering. I honestly don't even remember the name of the card that that it's related to, but basically there was a card with tutor in the title and allowed you to grab a card from your deck. And so when people say tutor out a card, it means basically being able to search for a specific card. That is way more powerful than drawing a card randomly, or even just a type of card. You keep flipping cards off the top of your deck to reach a certain type. Tutoring a card means to get a single specific card that you're looking for. Agent Coulson can basically grab you the specific preparation card that you want from your deck, and you're putting him into a deck where you have built a situation where preparation cards are either going to be useful for you, or potentially only have a single preparation card, a set of 3 of them, that is very powerful, that is going to be good for you, and Agent Coulson helps you get it out if you're just not drawing that card. So the way to look at him is not that you necessarily have to put him into a deck that's full of preparation cards, as long as you have a set of 3, 3 copies of a single card even, or 2 different preparation cards and multiple copies of them. It's worth it to play Agent Coulson because you get a solid ally that's 3 costs. You have the ability to do 6 thwart across those 3 turns. You have a blocker, and you're going to get to search out a specific card from your deck, thinning your deck and getting that card into your hand. And even if that card was useless, even if it obviously wouldn't be, you're not going to put a useless card in your deck, but let's just say it was useless, you can even still look at it as a resource that you're gaining into your hand, which means that Agent Coulson, you can almost look at it as being 2 costs instead of 3, because you're gaining a resource back that you can use for something else that turn. If you evaluate him as a 2 cost ally with 3 health that has 2 thwart and 1 attack and 1 consequential damage across both of those, with no ability even, is still solid enough in Justice that it would see play. And 100% it would. So the ability is just, the cherry on top, I think. And I think that Agent Coulson, for me anyways, I often undervalued him because I kept thinking about it in terms of, I'm not building a preparation deck, unless of course I was playing Black Widow. So that's, I think, the incorrect way to view him. And when you look at him under the right lens and you test him out in that environment, you realize that it's still a solid baseline stats and everything around him, but being able to search out that 1 card is actually pretty useful. So Agent Coulson slots in at number 3, and I'm pretty content and pretty happy with that spot for him on the list. And I honestly think I could even argue to put him potentially at number 2, depending on how often you're playing heroes like Black Widow. You might, if you play Black Widow constantly, if that's one of your favorite heroes, this might be your number 1 ally based on how much use it gets. So Agent Coulson's pretty solid, and he comes in at number 3. All right, so moving on to number 2. Now this is going to get interesting because number 2 and number 1, both of these allies have a lot of similarities between them in terms of their function, in terms of their abilities. There's a ton of similarities, and I actually went back and forth on where to slot them in because I think that they're both very powerful, but in just subtly different ways. One in terms of reliability, one in terms of potential. So I ended up slotting number 2 as Wiccan, which is one of basically the newest ally for Justice introduced in the game, and that is from the Scarlet Witch hero pack. So again, because of how new it is too, I was hesitant to just say, hey, this is the best Justice ally in the game, because we haven't had nearly as much time with this one yet. But either way, I still think it probably could have ended up there, and I could have made a pretty strong case for it being number 1. So Wiccan is a 2-cost ally, already a great start. 3 health, 1 attack, 1 thwart, a single consequential damage on both of those. After Wiccan thwarts you, discard the top card of the encounter deck, and for each boost icon that's discarded this way, deal 1 damage to an enemy. So obviously on average, you're probably going to be hitting at least 1 boost icon, which is a single damage on top of the 1 thwart you're already doing for a single exhaust on the ally. You might hit 3 boost icons, and then you're doing 1 thwart and 3 damage, which is obviously very, very good off a 2-cost ally. That's insane. But of course, there's potential for you to hit 0 and just do a single thwart and nothing else, and then it becomes a little bit underwhelming. But even then, it's a 2-cost ally, which 2-cost allies are already good as they are for blockers. There's just potential here. And so that's what keeps, I think, Wiccan for me personally, keeps Wiccan right now from being number 1, is that there is a potential to be really disappointed and get 0. If you're playing him in Scarlet Witch, it's a completely different situation because he's almost always going to be fantastic, because Scarlet Witch has the ability to manipulate these boost icons. You're probably always going to hit something you want. Wiccan is an auto include in a Scarlet Witch Justice deck. I think I'm trying to think of a situation you don't put Wiccan in if you're playing Justice Scarlet Witch. I can't think of one. I think you put Wiccan in no matter what. He's just very solid. If you are able to, with this 3 health, if you end up not even needing to block, let's just say top performance, if you do 3 turns in a row thwarting, and you do 3 thwart and you hit max boost icons and do 9 damage. For 2 costs, do 3 thwart and 9 damage. I know that's a very specific, hard to hit scenario, but it's not ridiculous in Scarlet Witch, and that is an insane result. Like, it's hard to ignore that. It's a cheap ally that can block for you and has the potential to really surprise you with the results you get. So I think that Wiccan could absolutely be in the #1 spot here. I think that for a lot of people, as time goes on, we will consider Wiccan to be one of, if not the best Justice ally. Obviously not knowing what other allies are going to be introduced into the game, but I think that he is much needed for Justice. We need this like really strong, consistent ally, or at least more of them. And so I'm really confident putting Wiccan at #2. But again, I honestly probably could have done #1, and I don't think I would have had too many double takes from my spot there. So with that being said, let's jump on to #1. Okay, so #1 is, of course, the reliable and powerful Daredevil, Matt Murdock. So Daredevil is a 4-cost ally with 3 health, 2 thwart, 2 attack, a single consequential damage on both of those. The response is after Daredevil thwarts, deal 1 damage to an enemy. So this is a more reliable but less powerful version of Wiccan, but the reliability is, sort of what you're getting there. You're paying more for Daredevil. You're getting the 2 on the thwart and the 2 on the attack. So baseline, you're going to do at least, if you didn't have to block with Daredevil, you can do 6 thwart or 6 attack or a mix of those across his three exhausts. The response is that every single time you thwart, you do a damage. So you're incentivized to just thwart. Let's say you didn't have to block with Daredevil. Let's say you got 3 actions out with him. For 4 costs, you're doing 6 thwart and 3 damage. That's pretty solid. And you had a blocker there if you needed. Even 4 to do, 4 thwart, 2 damage, and nullify an enemy attack by blocking is really good. I think, as I'm saying it, I almost wonder if I should put Wiccan at #1. It's just, again, there is the potential for Wiccan to just, end up completely underwhelming, or having underwhelming performance based on the boost icons that come out, and then it's just a 2-cost chump blocker that does a single damage or a single thwart, which might still be completely fine as an ally, and we need those, but it's not necessarily exciting to earn the #1 spot across the entire aspect. I think that Daredevil's reliability, especially in an aspect that doesn't have a ton of powerhouse allies, is very welcome, and I often, almost in every Justice deck I build, I throw Daredevil in, because it's just, I know that if I get him out, I'm going to have results that I'm happy with in some way, shape, or form. So Daredevil slots in at #1. As the game goes on and we get more Justice allies introduced into the game, I think this category is going to get even more contentious and a little bit more exciting. But again, Daredevil and Wiccan, in my opinion, are the top 2, and even from beyond there, when we're talking Agent Coulson and the other ones, there's so much potential there depending on the decks you're building, depending on the situation, depending on the villains you're playing against. It's hard to necessarily say this is definitively the best one, because I could easily have given the spot to Agent Coulson, depending if I'm playing Black Widow very often or decks where I'm really benefiting off of that preparation tutor. So Daredevil #1, but again, you might have a different list. And those are my top 5 Justice allies. Again, we don't have a ton of Justice allies introduced into the game yet, but of course this game is ever evolving, and pretty soon, who knows, we'll have 10, 12 Justice allies, and this list will have to be done again, and it'll be a lot harder to do. So again, this is an ever-changing game. These lists will be ever-changing, but as of 2021 April, when I'm doing this, these are my picks. Let me know in the comments what your top 5 Justice allies are. Rank them for me and let me know why you picked them. Tell me which ones you think I'm off base on. Do you think Quake or Spider-Man should have made the list? If so, which one should I have bumped off? And I love talking about this stuff with you. I had so much fun talking about the aggression allies and how everyone would rank them. So I'm really curious what everyone else's thoughts are. And also tell me, there's 2 other aspects we need to do besides basic and the heroes. So I'm going to be doing leadership and protection next. which one do you want to see next? Leadership obviously is the, the ally aspect. A lot of people have said leave that one for last. The other ones are a little bit more interesting. I'm open to whatever other people think. Let me know if you think it should be protection or leadership. I'll do those ones next. And then of course we can always jump into basic and the hero specific allies that are in the game. So thank you so much for watching. As always, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe if you enjoy the channel. We'd love to have you as part of the community, and we'll see you in the next one.